What's going on, everybody? I just want to start off by saying thank you for all the love and support we've received thus far for Season 2. Our team encourages you to take something meaningful away from each and every episode. And with that being said, you're in for a very special one today with my friend Terry Everett. Terry is a man that wears multiple hats, a passionate educator of young people, an aspiring medical doctor, and most of all, a humble student of life. In our many conversations, he's never shy to bring up his own personal missteps or share his favorite resources. So expect the same in today's episode. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of the Somebody's Son podcast, where biting your tongue is never allowed. Young men battle with the pressures of manhood every day. Each episode, we tackle topics that focus on worth, actions, and relationships. Our goal is simple: help men win the war with themselves.
Like one time I was doing one in DC and they were like, make sure you write out all your responses out and then try to stick to that.
And
they asked you to write the responses. Did they make you send it to them?
Like, no, I had to take it there and like read it so I can have my power.
And it was on camera?
Oh, it was like audio. But like,
these dudes be fake potting, man. These dudes be fake interviews.
There is a time for content to be scripted, right? Mm-hmm. Like when the president is addressing the nation. That's right. Probably good.
Probably good time right there.
Good reason to know what you're talking about, man. I don't want you to wing it. Because you got to project like confidence. I don't want you winging it on camera. We don't do the scripted thing. It don't work. Plus, I feel like we have way more meaningful conversations.
It's gonna be a time when the keynotes happen. Then you gotta have a little bit of organization,
a little bit of professionalism,
a little bit.
No, that's crazy. I really appreciate you hopping on the pod, though, bro.
Oh man, thanks for having me, man. I would see him and I'm like, yo, this is dope. I was always wondered how y'all two got into contact with each other because I was like, I feel like it's good. Like, they connected them, but, I mean, it's always good to see, so. Because I reached out one time and I told you, I was like, yo, this is dope, what you're doing and everything, and so, I mean, the universe brought it together, so I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, man, we know we
appreciate it. And when did you got in medical school? I know you got in. Which one, you going to VCU?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you start?
Appreciate it. End of July.
End of July.
Yeah.
And what you going to focus on?
So the first 2 years, I'm just doing it's basically in class. I want to do orthopedic surgery though, but my third year I could do 8 residencies, like small fellowships, sort of, for 3 weeks. So I'll see what I fall in love with, and then that'll take my path.
And the runway, how long? What's the time investment on average? I know you're an overachiever at everything.
On average, if I wanted to do say family medicine, family practice, about 8 years, 8 to 10. But with surgery, probably 10 to 12.
10 to 12.
So, from now?
Mm-hmm.
How old are you?
24.
Does it bother you that your first real doctor paycheck is so far out in the future?
I mean, not necessarily. When I used to scribe, I used to always look at the chain whenever I worked. So everybody would come in, we work 8 to 5 and then go home. You got the MAs, the nurses, the EMTs that come in, and we all work the same shift. This guy is making $700,000 a year. These people with all of their complaining are making about whatever they're making. So the investment that I put in, I'll be 36 in my prom, young, healthy, so I don't mind eating shit for 12 years. And then, because the time is going to come regardless. That's what any goal that I have in life is I'm going to be that age at that time regardless. So I might as well just grind it out and then take off from there.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, that was the one thing. So I remember when we met. So we met, Mr. Good connected us because I was a chem major pre-med, and you knew this already.
Yeah,
I was chem major pre-med, so he was my connected mentor.
Wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know about your major.
So Mr. Good paired me with him. And first of all, I don't know if it was an accepting thing. Hey, this is your mentor. Do you accept him? I didn't know if it was like that.
I'll pass down my wisdom to him.
So if that was the case, then thank you. If you had no choice, then still thank you for coming. But
Carlton don't really give people choices.
No, he don't give people.
You're gonna do this.
You good? Yeah. Hey man, I got a guy for you to meet. His name is Terry. Y'all are different. I was like, okay. I was like, all right. So
we love Carlton, by by the way.
We love Carlton. That's my guy. That's my guy.
Great impression.
But yeah, man, he pretty much said, look, it's a dude, man, who's on the, somewhat of the same path as you, what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But he comes from such a different background. And I remember the first time that we spoke, first of all, I knew he was legit because it was like a circle around him. I was like, what is this circle around him? Why did all these people gather to come here and listen to this dude? It's like more people wanted to come here and speak than the dude who was actually speaking. Like, I was like, well, who's this guy? And then I could tell, man, you got a lot of wisdom for a young age, man.
Appreciate it, man.
So yeah, we appreciate you coming. But I was gonna say the one thing about me that switched over. I switched from the pre-med track because I don't think I can wait 12 years. Or for me, it's even longer, right? It's like 16 years to get my check. And I don't necessarily, that for me told me that I'm not in love with medicine, right? Yeah. If I'm not willing to stay the course. And I was for business, fortunately, and then we got connected. We can talk off camera. I know we've already talked about it. We can definitely talk and chop it up, and I'll let you know if you're interested. But so you're in love with medicine. That's what you want to do.
No. I think the main reason I don't mind waiting the 12 years is because the money never really matters. I mean, I care about money, of course. But like, at this point in my life, I'm the wealthiest that I've ever been, even if I'm only making about like X amount of money. I'm not cashing it, balling out or anything, but I get to be a corridor and, give. And so I never cared about like, you'll never see me in high fashion brands and all of this other stuff. Yeah. The biggest thing here is that to me personally, I care more so about the challenge of life. So I seen that you have The Alchemist right there, and I bought the entire. Coelho is my favorite author. Yeah. So I just got reading this book, The Valkyries, and he was talking about the delineation between farmers and hunters. And farmers, they are at peace with life. They care about the passing of the seasons. They're at ease. But you got hunters who go into darkness to find the love of life. And so it's this sort of like restlessness that I forgot the author, but he talks about in Celestial Prophecy, where there's a restlessness that keeps us alive. And I mean, I know y'all can contend to this, where it's like the thrill of life comes from the challenges of life, and that's what equates to the love of life. And so it's not more so becoming a doctor as much as it is the journey of like going to be a doctor and getting through those challenges. Like the MCAT, my biggest focus wasn't getting a certain score. I was more focused on what type of person I wanted to be coming out of the MCAT, whether that was like spiritual or my outview on life or my outtake in my connection with my family and like investing in my support systems, and who do I become when I'm in the grind, because that's where I feel like I'm most at one with like the creator, essentially. So the 12 years, I don't really care, but it's like 12 years of like battle and fighting, and I like that. I just like to hunt, so to speak.
And the beauty is there's no shame in being a hunter, but there's equally no shame in being a farmer.
Exactly.
Right? And I think so many times in society, particularly for men, like we have battled with not pursuing whatever journey feels right for us because of outside noise or outside expectation. I would venture to say women have also experienced that struggle of doing what they want to do or doing what they're inclined to do, as opposed to doing what society tells you should be doing. The beauty about women, though, is that I personally believe they're the strongest beings on the planet. So they have found a way to say, I will do what you want me to do for a certain amount of time. And this is a means to an end. I'm going to do what I want to do, which I think is phenomenal. I think a lot of men struggle with. I think we had a great conversation with Vario, and he talked about the lack of male teachers. There's plenty of men that want to be teachers, but the first thing we talk about when it comes to teachers is their pay.
Paid enough. Yep.
Right? So it sucks, because how do you expect to drive greater interest with men to become teachers when we know the pay of teachers is not the greatest? And then you tell a man he's not a man if he don't make a certain amount of money. So are you telling him he shouldn't be a teacher, Or are you telling them being a teacher makes you not a man? Right? So I love the fact that for you, it's not even about the check, although you will secure a phenomenal bag, by the way. But it's not about that for you. It's not for that. I'm glad in your life journey, that's not what it's about.
Yeah, I was reading this one book, Obliquity, and it talks about how people, and this is kind of synonymous to what you were saying about how men they believe that manhood is predicated on like the amount of pay that they make. And they talk about fame as opposed to meaning and purpose and power and greatness, so to speak. So the guy says, I know a lot of famous people who aren't great, but I know a lot of great people who aren't famous. And so the way to really hone in on what really matters in life is essentially to figure out what is your meaning of life and live off of that means. And so I think I've been very fortunate to grow up in the environment that I've grown up in. Is because when I was in high school, I did this IB program where the rest of the school, I went to Warwick High School, like the rest of the school was just ghetto, like, but you got these 40 to 50 kids who are basically keeping the accreditation at the school. Their parents are breaded. All of the resources are going into this funding. However, I always seen the dichotomy between people who were happy and unhappy. And the happiest people weren't the parents and the students of the kids who, had all of this money and had all of these resources. It was the people in the neighborhoods that I grew up in and the students who found meaning in what they did because they were in that constant battle of support, provide, and essentially that essence of family. And so these communities that I've been in, I've been able to see, okay, well, this is actually a community, but these kids with the resources, they get their sense of pride, meaning, and purpose from having a lot of things. And then you dig deep to the core and it's all just meretricious, like it's gilded. It doesn't really mean anything, so to speak. And so once we can get that notion out of men that what they have is what they contribute to society, then we can finally break down the barrier and erase that, like flip the hierarchy upside down and say, okay, well, these actors and basketball players and everything, they're important to society because they attribute that entertainment or that sense of escapism. However, teachers, like just even art teachers, I still remember I had two male teachers, well, three, my entire life. It was Mr. Nowitzki, Mr. Baker, and then it was one like German dude prior to college. And they left a serious impression on my sense of manhood. And I think that you can't just go for the money or just think about the money because you're actually instilling purpose. I know I'm going on a rant, I know,
we agree with you. I think the main thing, we talk about this pretty often, is that there needs to be a shift, right? And instead of, men striving to be, famous or striving to get just bread, there needs to be a shift from that towards purpose-led action, right? Exactly. So we talk about that fairly often. And I think, again, I don't think being a basketball player or being a rapper or being an actor is an issue. Obviously it comes with great money, it comes with great risk to try to, become one of those. But I think if that's your purpose and you're that's what you feel like you're destined to do and that's what you want to do, that's how you want to impact the world, then go for it, right? Yeah. But I will say as well as you kind of mentioned this, I've noticed that, like we're talking about money here, and we're talking about being purpose-led, but I've noticed that, people who have resources have had the benefit of being creative because they don't have to worry about survival anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just trying to survive takes a lot of energy away that people with resources don't have to devote to, right? And that's why I feel like you see, I was listening to the dude who founded Robinhood, Vlad, I can't remember his last name, but I was listening to him on How I Built This, phenomenal podcast. And he was talking about one of the breakthrough moments for Robinhood and his journey to entrepreneurship was when he could make rent. Because he didn't have to worry about where he's going to sleep next or when he could pay his bills. You know what I mean? Yeah. So although I agree, absolutely. For me personally, I can't sit here and be purpose-driven as a person and say, bro, go get that bread. But I will tell you that because I feel like as a means towards your end, if you need to do what you can to survive also. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's conflicting. It's like, what advice would you give people who are struggling and, they don't necessarily know what to do, but they have big dreams to maybe create a business that shakes the earth or dents the universe?
I want to answer that question, but I feel like you're about to go somewhere.
I don't know how to answer that question. However, what I will say is I think the responsibility is on us to kind of
What do you mean by
push that
us?
narrative. Us in this chair, individuals, like every individual has their own responsibility to make sure that if we can't live in our full purpose, if we have to survive, then we're at least setting up the next generation to be more purpose-led. I look at all the things that, we're doing within my family. I'm sure you guys are doing other things as individuals and families to make sure that the next generation's path is a little bit easier. I don't have children yet, right? But I aspire to have children, and I want to make sure that when you say people with more resources are a bit more creative, I want to push my children into the arts. Like, not so, if you want to play a sport, that's fine. But I want to push them into musicianship, artistry, not so much college.
We had that conversation. You remember we had that conversation?
Yeah, we've had
He
that
told me
conversation.
there was a semester after my second semester, and you both remember this vividly, right? Because some words were exchanged, and I didn't interpret them correctly, and then there was a bit of a conflict, right?
Sure.
But the thing we talked about is I felt like I wanted to take a break, right, from college. And Chris told me, he was like, people with resources, specifically, we said like specifically, like people with privilege, like white people, their kids have an option to go and not to go, right? And I want to have that. And that's what you're talking about, right? I'm saying it from your perspective. I agree. And then from Donald's, he was saying, bro, get the college degree. Like
no, time out.
His point was have a plan. If you're not going to
have a plan. That's right. Okay, time has messed up.
My perspective
this is why there was a conflict.
This is exactly
why.
Play
telephone and the message changes as soon as it go from one sender to the other.
Well, at least we're here sitting in the same room.
I am not pro-college. He knows this more than anybody because he knows the way that I'm growing my son. I'm growing my son for him not to have to go to college.
Right. Yeah.
I am very intentional in that. So I wasn't pro-college. What I am pro, though, is I've seen so many people say they have a dream, they have a passion, they want to pursue, but they have no plan on what they're going to do at that time. So they say, we're sitting in a building that's owned by a black couple, right? Chris owns this building with his wife. Chris didn't say...
She owns the building with her husband.
I'm sorry. She owns the building with her husband. I actually said this in the letter. You're still in my joint already. Bro, they jack quick. But you didn't... He didn't say, I want to walk away from school, and what are you going to do? I don't know. No, before he bought this building, they were already putting in the work needed. She's already been putting in work for design, concept. How are we going to monetize? What could we do? I'm against folks telling me they want to go pursue something, but your actions don't tell me that. So I've seen people say they want to take a break from college. I've seen dudes say they want to take a break from their relationships. I've seen people say they want to take a break from their civic duties, like voting. Okay, so you want to break, or you don't want to continue the path that you said you were going to pursue? Fine, but what action have you taken to demonstrate that this passion or whatever you want to do is different? And typically when I had that conversation with people, they feel awkward because they recognize they're really not ready to walk away. More often than not, they're frustrated. And I have an issue with folks. I love the Nipsey Hussle story because he said the only difference between him and anybody else is that he didn't quit. It doesn't mean you're not going to have emotions like you don't want to, it's hard. I don't feel like I want to be here sometimes. You talked about the journey of being a doctor. It's not going to always be kicks and giggles. There's going to be times you're going to be completely stressed out of your mind. No one's going to understand. You might not have somebody you can run to, and you still got a paper tomorrow, and you still got to study. That's not the time for your OG or somebody you look up to tell you, bro, go take a break. You need a gap year right now. No, that's not real life. Real life is what we doing this weekend. We flew in on a Friday. We took calls all day on a Friday. We set up Friday night. We back up at 5 a.m. having dope conversation.
And you're 100% correct. And I think the difference from our approach, at least when it comes to Ali, is that I see the potential in Ali, as you do as well, right? And if I were Ali's age and thinking about taking a break from school, I would tell myself not to do it. I know me at 19 years old, I was not in a position to not go to college or take a year off, because I probably never would have went back, and we probably wouldn't be where I am today now. Ali is an exceptional case because he has a level of aptitude, a level of maturity, a level of wisdom and empathy. I think that I didn't see how a gap year would impact him. So I understand your point. We agree at the end of this. We agree at your point about not having a plan, not being willing to do what it takes to move in that purpose. I completely understand that, and I agree with it. But I think there are certain individuals like the Alis of the world who's an outlier, where a year break wouldn't hurt.
And to say it plainly too, bro. Like, I don't mind sharing this. I have the resources to do so as well, right? Yeah. Even at this age. So, but
I do want to touch on something though, because it's not just. I want to make sure we paint a accurate photo for folks. The Bill Gates of the world's had the means to code. Mm-hmm. Malcolm Gladwell chronicles this in Outliers. He had the ability to code so much before the age of 18 that folks graduating from the University of Michigan did not have the same amount of hours that he did. Mm-hmm. So he was able to walk away from school based on the investment. But guess what he wasn't doing? He wasn't going to a party. I guarantee you a lot of people who want to walk away from colleges are going to parties. Mm-hmm. He didn't have no pets. He had no girlfriend. Mm-hmm. He wasn't traveling. He was so devoted to the craft that if he takes his time from class to invest it into his craft, you could clearly tell he was on a trajectory to be the founder of Microsoft. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of times we have to be very careful when we're kicking advice to people. People can have potential all day in the world, right? We saw your potential before. I think a lot of people in Virginia saw your potential. You and your brother, twins, number one. I mean, that made you an outlier. Number two, your mom is phenomenal. It's not a knock on anybody else in your family, but it is very public how often your mom is in the ears of you and your brother, right? Yeah. I can see you being a doctor years ago. I could see you because you were devoting the time to the craft. Not to say that you don't do things outside of medicine, but there's been more cases, in my opinion, of people telling people to take breaks and they not devoted. Yeah. And then they like, yo, but my man Chris told me, not in this case, but you get what I'm saying? And I'm just like, hold on. Like, if you really that hungry, like,
but I think
it's
a level,
in your action.
I think it's level responsibility on both sides. I think what you're saying is correct. And one of the things I can appreciate, at least in a grand scheme of things, we're looking at people who have the privilege of access, right? We didn't have the luxury of, even if we wanted to take a break from school, not only was my mindset not there and I would have done so, but we didn't have the access or ability to do so, right? Yeah. And I'm confident enough in where I am today now that I'm not sure my life may look different than it does right now had I had an opportunity to actually pursue a purpose or a passion, right? Mm-hmm. Growing up, single family, been working since I've been 15 years old, like that W-2, and before that, doing whatever it is you got to do. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Whatever you got to do. I never had the opportunity to even, I'm over 30 years old now, and I'm finally starting to understand purpose. Mm-hmm. We bought this building, and the day we signed, we sat on the steps and said, well, what do we do now? Mm-hmm. Right? So we're finally starting to get our purpose.
You don't necessarily need to have a plan.
Exactly.
That's what I was going to say.
Exactly. But
I think there's power in that.
But it's also, it's power, it's power in youth, it's power in access. And for me, I just I'm only going to talk about the situation, Ali. I think you're approaching from a more general sense. I'm only speaking of the situation directly.
And I think you're right. You're right, by the way.
You're right. But only for the situation with Ali, he has certain things in his favor that makes him an outlier, which would make me be comfortable with giving him that feedback and say, hey, I think if anybody can take a break, I think it can be you. And that's something I wouldn't even afford myself. Who knows how our lives would be different if we had the opportunity to take the time out at 19, 20 years old and go see the world. Possibly. We could. Ali said he wants to and being more involved with creativity, like the next generation, we're working towards making sure they're more creative, understanding entrepreneurship and things like that. Our lives could look a whole lot different. Money, bank account, whatever it is, success, education. You can pick a aspect of your life that could be different. But I know that if I had the opportunity at a younger age to actually hone in, like the fact that Bill Gates was able to hone in on coding is phenomenal within itself.
I agree with you. But statistically, when you look at even I think it's roughly around 2,500 billionaires in the world. And if you look at the ones in the US, statistically, Bill Gates is, I love Malcolm Gladwell. He's an outlier. Yeah. Most of the kids with access, they have it and they don't even know what to do.
Exactly.
Because they say they want this and they have the access to go pursue it. There's more people. I think the Forbes list, they said 2/3 of the people on the Forbes 400, they're self-made. These are people that were the Terrys of the world. You have a greater, statistically, the probability of being successful without access is greater than those with. The Gary V's, the Grant Cardones. And so what I'm saying is, number one, if you want to be those people, if you want to be the Terrys of the world and be a doctor at 36 and never have to think about finances again in a meaningful way, you know what I mean? You'll still think about finances, but you'll be thinking about, hey, Chris, how many household markets can we go invest in? Or, you know what I mean? Things of that nature. How can you take your nonprofit, which I want to talk about, Be the Movement? How do you take that and scale that to other kids that need it? Statistically speaking, the probability is the kids with the access and I think it goes back to what you said about journey. Because there hasn't been a certain level of grind,
I was gonna say that.
Struggle. They've been afforded luxuries that prevent the development of the grit.
Yeah, man, that's what and you know what?
And I'll be honest with you, with my son, I think my son looks at me like, why are you making me get grit?
Yes.
No, dead serious, bro.
I've been in the crib. I've been in the crib.
And the reason why I do that is because he has access.
Yeah.
Because he has access, I don't want him to fall back.
Yeah. I asked him
on
about
the access.
I remember.
I want him to be, I got to really figure this out.
Yeah.
And I think that was my the exchange. Again, beautiful thing is there's no wrong way to there's so many different ways to be successful in the world. But I think the grit, you're very open about your mom. So is your brother. Shout out to your brother. Yo, we gonna make sure you get on the pod too, bro. I'm not picking a twin over the other. I just want to make sure that's well known. But like, clearly your mother did a fun. Do you have other siblings besides your brother?
So it's my mom and dad, me, Terrence, an older sister, my younger sister, and when people say, like, well, my whole notion on knowledge within itself, like people say I have a lot of wisdom for my age. However, I think the beauty in it is that I don't take accountability for any of it. Yeah. You know, I think we live by prescriptions, and if you were to come up to me and be like, how did you get to where you were? If I were to sit here and try to elaborate or elucidate the process of getting there, it'll be incorrect because I don't know how much outside knowledge was instilled for me to actually, apply. And so with my family dynamic, we literally all act the same. Like my dad and my mom are ridiculously goofy. My mom, she always was pushing education while my dad pushed the discipline. And my pop's like, jail twice, 2 strikes, 1 more, you done. So it's a lot of things that, you know, he had to like pull himself back from so he wouldn't put himself in that situation again. However, seeing that how willing he was to do so, would not even care when stuff hit the fan, that's when I was like, okay, well, that's where the passion came from and like the purpose of like provision. And my mom, I don't know, man, like my mom, she's just so wise. Like she's the reason why I fell in love with reading. You know, like we be broke, struggling, you know, like my dad, he still had access to the commissary when he lost his job. So we'd be eating, like we'd be taking donuts to lunch and all the kids thought it was cool for a little bit. Yeah. But then like after like the 4th week, we was like, all right, like we getting tired of these donuts. Yeah. But while everything was going crazy and it was a lot of commotion, I would see my mom run through a book a day and she was just so at peace. Yeah. And I was like, what are you doing? You know, and like I started like slowly but surely, I started picking up books and I'm like, yo, my mind is just like in all of these different places, and I'm taking in a lot of advice and wisdom from older people who already lived the life that I'm trying to live. And so I think the biggest thing for my parents as well as my siblings, the most grandiose thing that they did for me was provide corridors of my imagination and lead me to people who already understood this life. And I can humble myself enough to be like, I don't know what I want to do, or I don't know where I'm going. So let me read this book and allow it to read me so we can get there. And that's what made me.
Did they push you to read? Like, because you sat here and you've already mentioned like 4 different books. So I can tell you very well read. And I would say it's all when people often ask me, like, you know, I kind of get the same thing as well. It's like, you're wise for your age. You know, you're very well spoken. Some of my friends will come up to me and say, "Hey,
you built different."
You built different, exactly. And they own. So I just wanted to, articulate it differently. But as I was saying, some of my friends would ask me, like, I want to be able to better articulate what's in my mind. I'm having trouble speaking, and I'll say, write first thing, and then I'll say read, because it's funny. People often ask me how old I am, and I'll be jokingly saying like I'm thousands of years old, and I actually feel that way because from the amount of even biographies or books or stories that I've read, that's a whole person's life perspective put onto a text. Exactly, right? So I'm combing through all of this person's life perspective, and regardless of the way they write it, I'm taking it in, and it's coming in as advice. It's coming in as information, but we learn. I don't know how you got into reading, but it's funny. You know what Kamal told me the other day? He said if I took $1 million and I slapped you in the face with it, that's how. This is gonna be funny. He said if I took you $1 million and I slapped you in the face with it, you still got the $1 million, right? And the thing he was trying to tell me is, no matter how you learn anything, you still learned it. Exactly. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, indifferent, however you learn the lesson. Because I was telling him, my dad was trying to teach me a lot of lessons, but the way that I was receiving them, it just wasn't compatible, right? And he was saying, if I took this $1 million and threw it at you, you still have $1 million, bro. And I remember my dad telling me in 7th grade. So I started my library when I was in 7th grade. Because my dad told me, and I love my pops. So if he ever sees this episode, it's not a knock on you. Which one is my camera? Is it that camera? It's not a knock on you, man, Dad, all right? He said, son, I don't even know if you can read. I've never seen you, because I brought home my report card and it was 7th grade. I was just chilling. It was like a C on it. And he was like, my dad is a doctor. Of course, you already know that. My parents, right, are physicians. So he was like, I've never seen you read one day in my life. I don't even know if you can read. That's the $1 million. Now, he didn't hand it to me. He smacked me in the face with it.
And there's shout out to your pops.
Yeah, it's valuable, man.
It's not that it wasn't compatible, because you learned it.
Exactly.
And this is
I just didn't want to learn it that way. That's why I love the way you're
desirable.
Yes.
And that's
some lessons will come like that.
Your dad just encouraged me to double down. Dalen, I'm sorry, B. But you gotta I'm doubling down because it's not desirable in the moment.
Yeah.
Nope.
And I think as we start to look at, especially what it feels like to be a Black man navigating the world, a lot of the struggles I think we're having are not desirable. I think a lot of the struggles that whether it be police brutality, whether it be trying to climb the corporate ladder and there's not a lot of people that look like you, whether it's starting a business where your wife is running the business and you supporting that business, it's not desirable. What did your parents do? And I put an emphasis on your mom only because I seen your mom hop in these videos with you and your brother, which is just like, I'm like, yo, she need her own. I don't know if she has an account, but if she do, I'd definitely follow her. But what did they instill in you, or what did they expose you to that allowed you to continue to traverse this world even when it wasn't desirable? Because let's be clear, we talk about being different, and it's cool when you're around different people. It's oxygen because everybody in the room is different. But let's be very clear. There's friend groups that people would say we do too much. There's people that would say, why are you doing that? Why aren't you doing this?
Yeah.
Right? There's plenty of times I can say I've seen this with you and I've heard about it with you. I don't know your friend group just because we like 15 years apart. But like,
young man.
Maybe watching Netflix.
I've seen people treat Chris differently because they feel like, well, why he doing that? Why is he investing his time this way? It's different. It's cool when you're around different people and they encouraging you. But let's be very clear. When you're out in the community or you're around some friend groups, they don't encourage that difference.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you go back home, right?
Sometimes when you go back home. And
times.
I say the same thing with you. There's plenty of times that I've seen, I'm not in your immediate friend group, but we got a lot of synergies based on the fraternity. There's plenty of times people be like, yo, what is Terry doing? Like, so what did they instill that despite that, when it's not desirable, right? That you keep pressing forward.
I mean, well, first I think they've always protected our sense of self-confidence. They built it up and then they allowed us to go out and make our own mistakes, but then always have a place to retreat and always have that fox den. Most importantly, I think what they always did was honored our level of decision making. And so what that looked like was, I'm going to allow you to make a lot of these mistakes. However, you're going to learn from it and I'm not going to impose that on you. And so you asked me what got me into reading. I used to smoke weed. I used to smoke that stuff. I was on that stuff. but one time for Thanksgiving, I went home and this was the Thanksgiving of 2017. I went home and we were just talking a bunch of theoretical, conspiracy type, you smoking. And my mom was like, are you smoking? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, how does that affect who you want to be? And I told her, I was like, I'm just doing this like nothing. And then I went back to college and the month of December, I was like, yo, she didn't even be like, stop. She just asked a question. And I thought about it and I was like, my entire life, they've built this this system of morals that we've had. And we never ventured off of that until I got to college. Literally January 1st of 2018, that's when I started reading. That was like, whenever I felt the urge to smoke, I'ma just read. And so I wrote a book that summer and one of the opening lines was, it's kind of corny, but I replaced the type of papers that I was using to entertain my time. And all of that alludes to the question that you asked about what did they do? And it was just that moral system and protecting our sense of decision making so that I built the confidence in myself to say, okay, well, I can walk into a room and people are like, why are you doing that? Or why are you doing such and such and such? And I'm at peace with myself because I acknowledge that the decisions that I make work best for me. They've always worked. They always will work. So I don't have to be at war outside and battle all of these people. And we was joking about the friendship date tweet that went big and everything, and people saying all of this stuff. And I was like, I'm at peace within. I'm at peace with the decisions that I make. I think thoroughly through my outcomes. And so there's nothing that anybody else can tell me that is of criticism that isn't constructive for me to be like, well, yeah, let me reconsider that. Or you don't like that I'm doing this? Let me go ahead and do something else. Because the same things that I got talked about are the same things that put me in rooms of individuals like you all and great people. So I don't need anybody, to validate what I'm doing. Preach. As long as it's not hurting anybody.
Preach.
Power of consequence.
Yeah.
I think my mother, I grew up fast. I had to be kind of the man of the house at a relatively early age. And one of the things I think and I hear what you're saying. I'm trying to draw connections with how I was raised and understanding the power of consequence.
Preach.
Right? And it's not, consequence always has a negative connotation, it's a slap on the wrist. But consequence is $1
million.
Yeah.
I'm slap you with $1 million.
Consequence is the result of action or inaction, right? I don't know if that's the definition of it, but to me, a consequence is if you do something or if you don't do something, there's a result from that. And it seems to me like when you say your parents, pretty much invested in your decision making growing up and allowing your experiences to allow you to learn from your experiences, you were allowed to have a larger sense of consequence to happen to you, which shaped you a whole lot earlier. And Ali, it goes back to a point that you mentioned earlier about access, right? I want to kind of tie it back to access and how sometimes people with a lot of access don't necessarily maximize their potential, right?
I'm pretty sure. Was that my point or his point?
It was a general point.
Yeah. It was in the conversation.
He pointed. Yeah.
But there's a level of, because of the access, privilege, luxury, sometimes people don't understand that you not moving in purpose, or you not staying in school, or you taking a gap year or not taking a gap year in school. Everything has a consequence. But if you can shape and understand what that consequence is, how you want your life, your 20-year, down the road, if you can see how all these decisions now, the consequences of those in the future, it helps you make better decisions.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're just pretty much talking about living in awareness, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Being aware of the decisions that you're making and the impact that they have, not only on the long term of your own life, but of other people as well, right? Yeah. So that's pretty much one of the biggest things. But I remember, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say, but I remember Donald took me when I was in Atlanta to Dalen's school, and I was so shocked that, for one, there was kids that was actually, because when we went to public school, you know what I mean? So like, you see a private school for the first time and you're like, yo, this is crazy.
This is school.
This is a school? This looks like a campus. And it is a campus. It is. There you go. See, it's a campus. But I remember asking you, are you afraid that your son is gonna miss that gene? Like you know what I mean? Like you talked about it like it's grit, but I feel like it's like a type of hunger.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to elaborate on that, because you told me, because I'm giving it to him myself.
Amen. That's my job. When you're grown, I think a lot of times as parents, we're speaking from our own experiences. First of all, there ain't no manual. What I love about what you said about when you were talking to Ali about the way you navigate, I love your humility, because you could say there's other things that I might not even been aware of that helped me get here. The other beautiful thing is, if you told Ali exactly what you did, his journey would be completely different from yours, right?
So I might be like, that guy Terry's crazy. Don't listen to him.
So that's the beauty. Chris and his wife are commercial business owners before the age of 33. Phenomenal. If he goes and tells somebody else, they too could become a commercial business owner, but they might not have the same struggles he had. They might actually have more struggles.
Yeah.
Or
right?
less.
Or less. Right? I think the beauty... Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, hopefully less.
The beauty behind it is now they have wisdom. They're armed with wisdom that he might not have had because he didn't have direct access. One of the things, as I'm growing my child, I don't raise my child. You raise cattle. I do not raise my son. I grow my son. I look at all of the intangibles that he has that God has given him. I look at personality traits that he gets from his mom. I look at personality traits that he gets from me. Oh, by the way, it's not just limited to us. There's certain things about my son he gets from his uncles. There's certain things about my son he gets from his grandparents. And so I nurture those. But the grit, that is my responsibility. One of the things I love about what Chris said, he's not even a parent, and I continue to commend him. He was like, do I send my child out in the world with a false sense of reality, or do I give him those dosages myself? I give my son those grit dosages. And the reason why I give him those grit dosages is because I don't know when God's going to call me home. So I have to make sure, like, if I got called home today, would I feel confident in the way that I've grown him, that even if I didn't get as much time as I wanted with them, that I've done enough. I don't know the rest of your family members, but what I've seen with your mom, there's a joy your mom has when I see her in these videos. And she can be cutting up a fool and dancing, but I know your mom feels comfortable in what she's given you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parents that don't feel comfortable. They got grown kids, can't look their kids in the face because they have not given that to them, right? So for me, I try to give my son that grit. And the way I do that is, part of the things that I realized at an early age, there's plenty of people that we may work at the same place. we may be part of the same associations, board of directors, groups, whatever. We are very different. And they've made me feel different. And that's okay. Because my mom always told me, you may not know who you are, right? As you start to grow, you start to learn more and more about yourself. The human experience is about realizing more and more about who you are, right? What I love about that moral compass your parents gave you, and for me, when I was younger, I didn't embrace that compass, even though I knew my parents gave it to me. I know what I'm not, though.
Yeah, that's the most important.
I know what I'm not. So there's certain rooms I'll walk in, I don't feel comfortable in that room. There's certain activities that may take place, I don't feel comfortable performing those activities because I know what I'm not. I'm still learning who I am, but I know what I'm not. And I'm teaching that to him now because I want my son to be able to walk in rooms and sit with men or women or whoever. Kids. And I want him to know what he's not.
Yeah.
He's going to continue to learn who he is, but I always want him to know what he's not. And sometimes that's going to mean, like you said, he might have to change the papers, right? Which is a bar, by the way. We know you rap, by the way. But I want to nurture that. And to me, that's what growing your kids is really about, in my personal opinion. And so that's what I love about, I place an emphasis on your mom. This is not a knock at your dad. I haven't had any connectivity to him in the video. We're gonna have to get him in the next twin video. But I see that joy in your mom. And it's one thing, that's what I love about seeing active parents. When you see active parents, you can instantly relate with them because you know that they feel comfortable with what they gave. You know what I mean?
My dad, he would say something to my mom all the time. I would hear it as like when I was growing up, but as I got older, I started to realize, and my mom, she would have a problem with how my dad disciplined us, whether it's like, taking certain things away when we were younger, getting whoopings, or just like, just how he maneuvered through teaching us how to be men. Yeah. He would always tell my mom, well, she would be like, well, I think they deserve such and such and such. And they like, getting a little verbal altercation about like how we should go about the level of discipline that we received. And we always look at my mom and he would be like, I'm not raising boys, I'm raising men. And no disrespect to you, but I don't expect you to understand what I'm instilling inside these young men. And me and Terrence would be in the background mad because we knew he was about to get a whooping. I don't want to be no man.
He consequences, right? You weren't able to convince him, man.
But eventually I started to understand that, okay, well, if I make these decisions for my life, there's always that path for you to be a boy or a man. And how do I, stay within that path to be that man that I want to be, essentially. So,
yeah. What I love about healthy parenting is that it's guardrails, not handcuffs. I don't handcuff my kid. I give my son enough room. We were sitting down. I got a good friend in Atlanta named Ray Mack. Ray is a barber. Phenomenal barber. He's also an entrepreneur in so many other ways, but he owns his own barbershop. And we were talking about Thanos, the movie Thanos. Every time he gets there, Ray queues up movies for Dalen because he knows I make Dalen, I'm very intentional with how he spends his time. Very intentional about that. And so when he gets there, he loves going to the barbershop because he know Ray gonna let him watch TV. He loves Ray. Everybody love Ray, right? So and his haircut is routine. It's every week. He didn't like it at first. Why I gotta come get my haircut every week? It's a responsibility. There's a certain standard of excellence. You're gonna live up to that excellence in these guardrails, right? So what I love about it is your kids will show you moments where your parenting takes fruit and you may be on the opposite end of that. And it's a reality. It's beautiful. So we're sitting down watching Thanos or whatever. And I'm like, we're watching like Justice League or something. But the character looked very similar to Thanos. It's a recent movie, super action movie, but it's not Thanos, but the character looks like Thanos. And I'm like, that's the character, what's his name? Thanos? And I was like, Dan was like, he might have said Thanos or Thanos. Whatever he said, I thought it was the opposite. So I was like, hey, well, why don't we just ask Mr. Ray? So I'm like, Mr. Ray, what do you call it? He was like, Dalen, I'm not gonna lie. I call it what your dad called it. Whether it was Thanos or Thanos is irrelevant. My son looked at him. I said, see, Dalen, he right. I'm right. Mr. Ray, he said, that's just one person. You can't take one person and think you're right. That's just one person. I don't change what I think it's called just because I love you, Mr. Ray, but and
that is your son.
Yeah.
Good gracious.
But it's 12 people. I don't
But what I liked about it was, Ray, you talked about your parents encouraged you to make your own decisions. In that moment, Dalen is not Ray's son. Ray doubled down on it. He said, listen to me, even if I think you're wrong, I love the fact that you're not going to allow one person to drown out your voice. I love that. Yeah. We had to pause the movie, bro. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. I'm sitting there like, I'm about to cry in the barber chair. But he was like, that ain't my son. But what I loved about it was he was like, don't ever let somebody drown your voice, right? That's powerful. That's powerful because you got to have men in your circle that allow you to not drown out your voice. And so it doubled down on so many other things that my mom has told me about knowing who you aren't, right? And I love the fact that your parents allow you to do that. So I do want to say this, man. I thoroughly appreciate you making time. Did not think you was going to make me get a little teary-eyed. It's crazy. Terry over here, man. It's crazy. But I will tell you this, man. We see what you're doing. We see what your brother is doing. We love the fact. The other day, man, my wife's in pharmacy and you over here rapping.
That joke was crazy.
What, 5-glycerin or something? And I'm like, yo, he's making science available to kids. You're meeting kids where they are. You're taking hip hop and merging it with education and they're walking away. I can care less how they learn it. I can care less how they learn. If you hitting them with the $1 million through raps and that's how they learning about science and the other teacher is just teaching them the regular traditional way, who cares? They're learning. So I want you to know something, man. Do not allow them to drown out your voice. Regardless of what people may say, you moving different, they might not feel comfortable. Do not allow them to drown out your voice because what your parents have instilled in you and your brother, that's powerful. And there's people learning from it. And I'm glad we had this book before you went viral so people won't think nothing crazy, man. But honestly, forget what they think. I just want you to know, don't allow them to drown out your voice, bro. You are here for a reason. And if you keep moving purposely, you're going to connect with people in ways the world is not ready for. So keep being you, bro.
I appreciate it.
And if you don't mind, I just wanted to ask, can you expand upon Be the Movement? Talk about that a little bit.
So I'll kind of like bridge the two together.
Sure.
Like when you talk about drowning, there was just like one sermon I was watching. It was like, if you have your own set of morals and you stick to that, you're going to continue to like the whole like Peter walking on water, realizing his humanity and drowning. If you keep your set of morals and you keep your faith, then you'll walk on water that people drown in. And David Goggins, I listen.
Beast.
Just amazing.
Yeah,
he's great. He's great. He always talks about how like people will see you walk on water and they'll be like, oh, it's because this guy can't swim. So it's like you learn essentially no matter what you do, people are always going to have that criticism. But if you're at like how much of peace are you at inside, that'll determine everything. And so Be the Movement, me and Terrence, we started our freshman year. Craziest thing ever. Like the reason we started it was because like, the whole backstory of being confident within ourselves. But literally like that, my dad had to borrow against his 401k to help my sister out with the finances because she was like leaving school essentially. And got a letter from VCU like, yo, if y'all don't, like they sliced our financial aid in half and it was like, y'all gonna have to leave if y'all can't front this bill. And we were like, yo, so this was January. We got snowed in and we walked all around campus and everything was close. We just came in and Terrence was like, yo, let's do a Geeked Up challenge. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. So we shot the video, Joe went viral, and that literally like saved us from like having to leave school. We didn't do that for that purpose, but that's what kept us there. And
meaning
so,
the video, like VCU saw the video?
The earnings you made from the video?
That and, them being able to find extra funds for us to stay in school. Yeah, so it was a blessing. And when my mom was also fighting at the financial aid office, they bringing all these black kids to VCU, you're not gonna kick them out. So, like you said, my mom, she's an amazing person. Yeah. But essentially, as we started doing more like bookings and everything, and like just want to talk to a lot of students, my mom was like, well, we can't just accept money on like certain terms because the whole like financial legal thing and everything. So she was like, we'll just establish the LLC. And we went ahead and made it a nonprofit and we became official. After that, we kind of like took a break from it a little bit because it was all of that pressure of, okay, well, these are who people want you to be. Mm-hmm. And I felt like we hit a standstill because it was like, dang, all of these people are giving me, notoriety for who this person is. Let me be that person. I'm 18, 19 years old. I get stuck in it. But me and Terrence took a while away from it, and it was like, okay, well, we're going to stop doing the videos for a while because what it's doing is it's keeping us as these people. The video's point was to fall in love with the trajectory of these men in the video, not the men in themselves. So once we took a break, we came back to it, and we started doing a lot more speaking engagements. However, we had to become a lot more intentional of what we were saying because we were telling a narrative of what we used to be as opposed to information that would push us to get to where we were and go further. And after that, the videos turned, like the rap videos about who we are, turned into lesson plans and different engagements. We kind of backed off of like the bigger, higher, commercial talk to kids and went more so for the foster homes, the juvenile delinquent centers, places where we couldn't take our phones and record a lot of the stuff. So Be the Movement has always been like the passion. We didn't even make the name. My mom made the name. I didn't even like the name at first, but they said it so much, it was like, all right, we just keep the name. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we're still running strong with it. Terrence is handling a lot more because like I'm preparing for medical school. But yeah, just.
And what's the purpose?
Inspire the youth. Essentially, it's the same thing that It's the same thing that everybody wants to do, just with our spin on it. Biggest thing is me and Terrence never signed up to save the world or save all like the children and everything, but I always think of myself as a translator. My mom, she would always tell us when we were younger, she was like, I'm birthing two nations. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I didn't even look it up because I didn't really care that much. But essentially what happened is Terrence is more so the suave, and that's like rap type, hip hop. He's you chill with it. And then I'm more so like the business oriented, like knowledgeable type of individual. And we fuse those together, and that's how you get a lot of the rap videos. Yeah. And once we started realizing that, okay, well, this is who we are together, then that's what Be the Movement was within itself. I ain't gonna lie, I forgot the question a little bit. But
no, that was you answered it. You answered it.
What was the purpose? As long as I answered
you answered it, man.
Matters,
Your mom says she's birthing two nations.
Two nations.
And if you look at historically where humanity started, you're right, it's powerful. You look at historically, that's Abraham, I'm gonna make you the father of many nations. And if folks, that's why I say we don't raise kids. You grow kids because you're growing them to be whatever they're supposed to be. Whatever that purpose is, that's not for us to dictate. Our goal is to create a guardrail for that to blossom and mature. So shout out to your parents.
Shout out to
your parents. Bro.
Shout out to Be the Movement, man.
Yeah, man. Be the Movement. Go check that. Where can people check you out at? Be the Movement.
Be the Movement is follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the letter B, the movement _.
Yeah.
We have everything, the link trees and everything on our social media pages, Facebook, website, etc. And we might just pop up on your TL one time.
There you go.
Who knows?
Be the Movement _. Hey, appreciate you pulling up.
Hey, no problem.
This is great.
My guy.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Somebody's Son podcast. We encourage you to share this episode with a friend. And remember, on this path called life, you are not alone. Thank you for watching. Until next time.
She liked the way that I finessed her. She stared so long, she let me know.